Bitcoin just made a new all-time high and altcoins have yet to pick up. I'm going to give you my technical analysis breakdown of Bitcoin, Ethereum, and I will also choose between 3 altcoins where I'm going to give you my high time frame but also low time frame perspective. So enjoy this video. I want to start by looking at BTC, and what we can clearly see is that last week BTC made a new all-time high, which we are currently retesting. So for me, it's going to be very important to analyze the context once again to identify whether I want to take a short trade on Bitcoin, if I'm maybe already in a short trade, or what I'm looking at next. I will also look at the order flow of Bitcoin because there's something that I find a little bit suspicious, which I want you to see as well. So let's start by looking at this fractal right here. And what we can see is that BTC is currently retesting the CC. However, if we look a little bit closer, we can see that over the weekend, actually over Sunday, we had a nice rise to the upside, and that down here was only a liquidity grab. So I, for myself, don't consider it too bearish, and I actually prefer to see higher. But I'm obviously trading the charts, not my bias. We are currently working with the CC, and this, in my opinion, is the last major level of BTC before I would look towards a new all-time high. Okay, so we are at critical resistance, but for myself, this does not equal a short trade yet. The reason for this is hidden in the order flow and is something I'm going to show you now. So for me, when I'm trading BTC, I sometimes like to be a little bit later to a move than being too early. What that means is, if BTC rejects here, I can still look for short trades the moment we do higher time frame market structure changes. However, I don't like to be too aggressive, especially when I see a little bit of a red flag, which I'm going to show you now on the order flow. This is obviously something that we teach over at CC, so if you find it difficult to read the order flow, we have in-depth courses about everything, so I do recommend to check these out as well. But what I want you to pay attention to on this move into new all-time highs was the following. So something that's very important when we read the order flow is always the open interest and also the volume. So what we can see at this all-time high, if we zoom into this right here, is that we had a clear increase in open interest. That means we have new positions opening in this fractal of the chart. If we zoom into this, we can get more information of the orders that were coming through. And if we check this, we can see we had an increase in open interest. That means new positions opening. And this was this in total was minus 30 million. That means we had 30 million shorts opening in this point in the chart. Then we had 1.6 million, then we had another 20 million shorts opening, then we had 14 million shorts opening, continued with 10 million shorts opening, and the rest is not too important. But what that typically means is that there is a lot of liquidity resting above. So that means so many people have been trying to short this all-time high on BTC that there is a lot of liquidity to the upside. And what that means for me is I am going to monitor the reaction at this current all-time high to see if we can grab the liquidity once more and then end in an SFP. So if BTC makes a new all-time high, I'm looking at the 4-hour time frame, takes out $112,055 on Bybit. It only SFPs the high. I am interested in taking a short trade. This will be my first short trade in this entire section of the chart if we do this SFP. All right, so this is what I'm looking at next. I don't want to be too aggressive shorting the retest here. I would understand if we reject here. However, I like to stay more patient and wait for the higher time frame market structure changes first. So if I go back to the higher time frames, I also want to show you a channel that I'm looking at, and this is a channel connecting this previous all-time high and the pullback that we had into $74,000. So what we can see, and what I like about this actually, is that we had the middle of the channel pretty perfectly respected. We got the reclaim here, another impulse to the upside. And technically speaking, if there is not, or if it's not ending in an SFP of the current all-time high, we could be looking for at least 100 and let's just call it $16,000 next. I, for myself though, would anticipate that we could even see another bigger increase to the upside if this top of the channel does not hold. Okay, so ultimately I am looking for this SFP. But if there's no bearish reaction, I would look for much higher on BTC. So also something we have to pay attention to is the market structure. As always, if you followed my altcoin strategy, I'm applying the exact same to BTC. The first and foremost important thing we always have to analyze is the context. So what does the context say on BTC? We have a clean uptrend ever since we hit that $75,000. We can see prices making higher highs, higher lows, higher high, higher low, higher high. And even the pullback that we had from all-time highs still ended in a higher low formation for now. Okay, so that being said, the most sensible idea is still to look for long trades on pullbacks until we get that structure change. And this would be making that higher low somewhere up here and then take the lows once more and then simply continue this trend to the downside. But that is too early to tell. That hasn't happened yet. Thus, I am also looking for longs going with the trend. And for me, there is one level which is pretty important that sits at around $105,000. And I also think that if we lose $105,000, we are probably heading towards $100,000 next. So this is going to be a key level. I'm going to zoom into this here to explain you exactly what I'm looking at. In terms of context, as I already said, we have an uptrend. The next thing I have to check is the confluence. At this level, we do have a daily level of support. We also have the previous week value area low. Okay, so if you are not familiar with previous week values, this is also something that we teach over at CC, but this is something that is telling you quite a lot about previous week's price action. So this, in my opinion, is a very interesting level. We can also use anchored VWAPs and see that this is lining up with this level. So it's a little bit of a zone. I would look at support coming in between 106 down to $105,000. We also have some resting liquidity down here. If we simply look at this structure of the lows here, this is also something I like to see close to support because this is giving us a very, very simple entry. If I look at a support level like this, I always like to see a reference level to be claimed. So say, for example, we are rejecting here, hit our level of confluence, and then we reclaim this previous low. This for me would be a long trade that is going with the trend. All right, so I have two scenarios that I am interested in myself. This is one, the SFP of the current all-time highs, as I already explained. And the second area of interest is going to be at around $105,000 for a long trade going with the trend. For me, where we are now at this retest of the previous all-time high, it is time to stay patient and wait for a better level. That means hitting my confluence above or below, or simply wait for more price action if I want to take a short trade, and that is not going to be the all-time or this current all-time high SFP. All right, so this is my current analysis on BTC. 105,000, very important. Next very important level is 110. If that is claimed, I expect a new all-time high. I also want to have a look at Ethereum and want to point something out here on Ethereum, which I noticed over the last months trading Ethereum. So what we typically see on Ethereum is that we have a range of that is going on for 2 to 3 weeks, and then we get this impulsive move. We had this range going on for It was about 2 weeks, then we had an impulsive move. Then we had another range for 2 weeks, impulsive move. Another range for 2 weeks, impulsive move. Doing the same impulsive move. Now we can see that we are trading within this range again. And if you ask me, for me personally, it's always me who's putting money on the lines, and I don't like to involve myself in this type of price action. If you ask me, Ethereum hasn't shown any signs of weakness yet, but I simply have too little confluence for me to be interested in any long trades on Ethereum at the moment. For me, the best long trades have been down here. So what that means is, this is a very key part of being a trader, is we have to stay patient and wait for those bigger levels to be hit, where we potentially get into a trade and can hold that for much longer. In between this local range right here, I consider it more of a 50-50. It also comes down to what BTC is doing. So over the next couple of weeks, I'm going to have to place a lot of emphasis on what BTC is doing, because most people know my approach when trading altcoins. I have a top-down approach. That means I'm analyzing BTC first. I need to get the context of BTC. Then I check the biggest altcoin in the space, which is Ethereum. And only then I can look at the lower cap altcoins to formulate a plan on these altcoins. So here for Ethereum, it's going to be very important to see what BTC is doing. Say, for example, BTC is crashing to the downside. I would expect to see follow through on Ethereum. If BTC is simply showing strength to the upside, I would expect Ethereum to also move to the upside. All right. So in my opinion, there's no imminent trade on Ethereum, and I can only prepare myself for the next biggest zones on Ethereum. The first one is still going to be $3,000. Why? I always like to look at previous ranges to analyze the context, as most of you know. What we can see at around $3,000 is that we have this previous massive range value area low. This is always a very critical level when it comes to trading altcoins. So I'm going to draw a line here. And then I have to look for confluences. What I can see here on Ethereum is that this is lining up with previous supply. This is something I love to see on a previous range value area low. And we also have a naked point of control. So if you ask me, if Ethereum can break out of this range, the next target is going to be $3,000. I'm going to clean this up so we only look at this level. It's going to be 3,000, also lining up with quite a lot of liquidity, because we can see the series of lower highs here on Ethereum. So I'm going to place an alert here, draw a box as an area of interest for the short trade. Or another scenario is obviously that Ethereum is moving to the downside. And something I am also keeping in mind is this impulse that we had on Ethereum, which means that these impulses tend to get retraced pretty quickly. Some people have seen the bar patterns before. I'm not really trading off of this, but it is something we have to keep in mind, right? So if we drop down from here, I would be very careful longing in this range right here. What I prefer to see is a retest of the zone between 1,900 down to 1,800, as that is where we at least have this previous supply lining up. And this is also lining up with the previous range point of control. So in my opinion, on Ethereum, I have to stay patient to either wait for a move to the upside or a move to the downside to wait for my better and bigger levels. So I also want to give you an update on some altcoins, and what I have done again was ask you which altcoins you want me to look at. So what I'm doing is, before I do these videos on a Monday, I'm always doing a post over on X on a Sunday to ask you about your requests and which altcoins you want me to look at. And something that was very prominent here, which is nice to see actually, because I do like the chart and I have already done some analysis on it last week, is that many people requested Doge. So we can see This person Zelot requested Doge. Then we had Road 24, 21, whatever. This one Doge. So it seems like there's some interest on Doge. So let's have a look at it. And on Doge, I have already done my altcoin weekly update for the champion members last week. So I'm going to break down what I'm looking at here on Doge and explain these exact setups. So for this, I want to hide a couple of things first and see where Doge is coming from. Because what I always say is we have to analyze the context first. So in terms of context, the most powerful tool, if you ask me, is previous range value areas. And if we go even to a weekly time frame here, we can see, oh, let me hide everything real quick. If we look at the weekly time frame, we had this massive pump to the upside on Doge. We had this, what is it? Is it an all-time high here on BTC? I don't know if there was a previous higher high. But anyway, we can see we had a nice drop to the downside, and all we have done was retest this previous range value area high. This for me is key information that this was a interesting bounce to at least look at this chart and see what it's up to next. For this, I have to check the lower time frames here, analyze the liquidity that we might still have below the current low. And in my opinion, if you ask me, the liquidity was taken because we ended up having a nice liquidity grab SFP down here. So for my analysis, I would say the low is finished. What we have seen next is that price was taking these highs at around 0.2. So price was making this higher high, and that means if Doge has retracements into levels of confluence, I am interested in looking at long trades, trying to take this higher. So for this, I have context lining up. Now I have to check confluences as always. And on Doge, this fortunately is also not too difficult. So I am looking at two areas where I am interested. Potentially, I'm even interested in building a long-term position. Okay, so what that means is I have two areas that I like for the long trades, and I'm simply laddering into a trade on both of these levels. The first area is going to be this anchored VWAP from the current low, as that is also lining up with this previous supply zone. So I can foresee a scenario where Doge is retracing, but not retracing enough to hit our lower level of confluence. So what I like to do in these scenarios is simply ladder into a trade. And for me, this is going to be a laddered entry between this daily NPOC and this weekly and previous range point of control. If Doge manages to claim this downtrend anchored VWAP, I would not be surprised to see another increase of 25% into this previous range value area low. Okay, but first, obviously, we have to claim this anchored VWAP, and this is something for the day trades where I would even look for a short trade. Why? We have a very simple entry trigger here, which is going to be a liquidity grab, meaning an SFP into the weekly and this downtrend anchored VWAP. If we get this, very similar to what I'm looking at on BTC, I would be interested in an SFP short trade targeting my levels of confluence. So this is what I'm looking at on Doge. In between, I am not interested in a trade where we are now. I also want to give an update on Solana. Solana is obviously a very, very interesting coin these days. We always get many requests for Solana. I love to trade it. I am in a spot position since $100. We have now just hit my massive level of resistance, which I was even considering for a short trade, gave that for the champion members. So we are now in that beautiful position of being in a long trade from the lows and a short trade from the highs. All right, so this short trade obviously starts as a hedge trade because overall I am bullish on Solana. I'm expecting higher. If we reclaim this previous range value area low, I would foresee another increase of 17% to the upside at least. But we can't ignore these massive levels of resistance, so it doesn't hurt to at least look for a hedge trade. So what I'm going to do now is look at the levels where I'm interested in long trades if we see a pullback. And I'm also going to see if there's another major level of resistance to be aware of. So for this, I need to check my high time frame levels as always and see where we have the best confluences. So this is pretty cluttered, something I don't like as much. So what I like to do in these scenarios is to hide a couple of levels because I don't like to have a cluttered chart like this. So I'm going to hide this because I know I wouldn't be trading in this zone anyway. So if I hide all of this, that is too low in the chart. I can hide all of that. I am left with areas that I'm actually interested in trading. And I can see that we still have massive levels of support here. So let me just check in fixed range here. Okay, that's still beautiful. Perfect. So in my opinion, it is very simple on Solana. If we get a pullback into 146, this is going to be my first area of interest on the swing trades. Okay, now we're looking at swing trades. This is not a day trade. Similar to what we already had on Doge, we have two massive levels of confluence, however, not as close together as on Doge. So what I like to do when it comes to trading is split this into two areas of interest. Something I always have to prepare for when trading any asset really is, even if I have context lining up, even if I have a nice confluence, and then even if I have a good entry trigger, I might still lose the trade. So my first area is going to be 100 and let's just say 45 on Solana. I am taking a trade here if I see a bullish reaction. This can be based off candle closes, this can be based off market structure, however conservative you want to trade this. But this is still no guarantee that Solana is going to have follow through to the upside. And if Solana sees another drop to the downside, I am going to attempt another long trade at around $125. Okay, so what that means on Solana is that I'm taking it level to level on potential pullbacks. This is still too early. Everything is still bullish. We haven't seen a major pullback. But if we do, I'm ready and waiting for 145 and then 125 next to look for those long trades. All right. I can also see some low time frame potential on Solana, but this is probably out of the scope of this video, where 168 looks interesting for a day trade, but this is something that I mostly cover in at Chart Champions for the champion members, because that's going to be too much information if I also cover too many low time frame trades here. So if I then look at the resistances to the upside, I would honestly say 200 is a psychological level, but I would expect this to be claimed pretty easily. My next target on Solana is going to be 216. This is not even interesting for me for a short trade. This would also be a nice technical level for a take profit, for example, from the long that we had from $100. Even gave this in a public stream, by the way. And yeah, this looks interesting. Where I would start to become interested in a short trade is going to be 238, because this is the previous range value area high. We have a daily, weekly naked point of control and also a monthly. So I am still very much looking for higher on Solana. I'm bullish, looking for longs on retracements. I am aware of the resistances that we have to the upside. I am just not too interested in short trades unless we see another big move to the upside, and this, upon claiming the value area low, would be another increase of 30%. So this is going to be my breakdown of BTC, Ethereum, Solana, and Doge. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments down below if you want me to look at any other altcoins for the next video, what you think about these assets, and I'm going to see you in the next video over on X or in the Champion membership. So see you all over there, and bye-bye.